Welcome to Mission Driven Founders, where passion meets purpose. If you're dreaming of starting your own business, whether it's in beauty, wellness, or beyond, you're in the right place. We are going behind the scenes with inspiring entrepreneurs who are not just building brands, but driving real change. So hit subscribe, tap the bell for updates, and stick around. This conversation could be the spark that ignites your journey. Today, we are going behind the scenes with an amazing chef and consultant and educator who doesn't just cook, she architects wellness through flavor. With over 16 years, flavor and nutrition. With over 16 years of experience across the globe, from Asia to the Caribbean, she is the founder of Scai, Sustainable Culinary Arts and Innovation. Let's welcome the incredible Manuela Scalini and dive into her inspiring journey and see how she's contributing to our movement and making a difference in the world. Manuela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and to actually get to have a conversation about one of our favorite subjects, which is food.
It is, and I have to say something. Manuela is not just an amazing, talented professional, expert in wellness and nutrition, herbs, functional foods. She's also a very good friend. We went to school together, and I love Manuela in all the senses. Like, she's a human being that is amazing, not just for, as a friend, as a professional, but also for the planet, because her work with sustainability is incredible. And she's going to tell us all about it, right, Manu?
Oh, thank you so much. I know this is so cool. I think we reconnected about what, like 20 years ago when
Yeah,
you owned a spa in Brazil. Like, yeah, we go back such a long time. And to think that
such
we've known each other since what, like we were teenagers or even prior to that, and we ended up in the same business, right? Making this place a healthier place and a better earth to live in as well, right?
that is so true. I love how we reconnected after high school, and we were in the same field and, with the same purpose, with the same mission. The first question is, your journey spans so many different cultures and kitchens. Can you take us back to the moment that you realized that food wasn't just about just nutrition or taste, but a vehicle for global wellness? Take us back to the moment where it all began, where your inspiration came from. How did it all start?
Oh gosh, that was how long do we have? I've been working as a chef now for 16 years. 17 years is when I started training. And for me, food was always just more than the sustenance. It was more than the nutrition. It was more than protein. For me, food was always how you live, how you relate to others. It's also how you heal, you know. So for me, food is the one thing that ties us all in a connection, in a web of connections, right? Because we all eat. It doesn't matter if we eat protein, if we're vegan, if you're raw food, we all eat, and we all share a meal together. And so that for me is what food is. And it began about 17 years ago when I actually was in a different field. I was in special effects, and I was feeling a little bit out of place. I was feeling a little bit disconnected from work, and I did a detox. And I think, like many people, once I did the detox, that was a big, like, aha moment for me, because from the moment I cleaned up my diet, I started cleaning up, relationships and work and how you interact with others, how you actually sit down and eat or not. And so that 1 week detox ended up becoming a month-long detox. And after a month, it ended up becoming a complete career transition. It was a transition of countries. I moved countries, I changed careers, and I went back to school at the age of what, 38. I decided I have to go and learn all this so then I can go and I can share with others what I learned so it can be as life changing as it was for me.
It's such a beautiful journey. And what you said about food, it's so true. We all have to eat, and
Hmm.
eating is a very emotional thing. It's not just fueling your body with something. It's not, some people do eat like that, especially when they're rushing at work. But every special moment involves food, family dinners, a date, or cooking with your kids. So it is a very, very special um just bond that you create with people through food. I love that. I really do. It's emotional, it's mindful, it's physical, it's spiritual, it's the whole thing.
Yes, and it's cultural too, you know. So that was in when I was in college, when I was still studying film, I had a minor in cultural anthropology. So I was always fascinated to see how different cultures approach. At the time, it wasn't necessarily food, but nowadays, just looking at the spices and how the spices reflect certain cultures and vice versa, and how, for example, every culture has their own version of like their favorite bread. If you look at noodles, if you look at rice dishes, it's if you see how each culture will consume those what we call like the basic staples that's part of a human diet. Every single culture has its own technique. They have its own health, like health related technique that they use for the food. Like this is healing, you know. And so learning all of that, you actually learn about the culture too, which for me is like that's like what really makes my heart sing.
It is so true. And we went to a school that was very multicultural, and
Yes.
you learn so much from food, about the person, about the culture of that place. And it's amazing. I love that too. So, your work with everyone from professional chefs to home cooks, you work with all of them. How do you envision your culinary wellness philosophy changing their daily lives? How do you help them overcome the idea that healthy, plant forward eating is difficult or boring or just something that's not attractive to their public if you're working with chefs or other cooks? How do you work in your consulting side?
Well, my work is an immediate reflection of my own journey with food. So, just to take a quick step back, when I went to culinary school, I studied raw food, and I was actually 100% raw vegan for I would say maybe 5 years. And from that, I ended up becoming plant-based chef, and from plant-based, I went on to plant forward. And then as I started noticing how my work was always very directly tied to what was available locally and seasonally, and also given the fact that I was living in a third world country on an island, I didn't really have access to much. That's when I was like, okay, well, I guess it's also very sustainable what I'm doing. So it kind of became a big tapestry of my own life experience. But my approach, whether you're a home cook, whether you're a 5 year old, whether you are um, somebody who's looking for an anti aging diet, or if you are a hospitality professional, I don't teach diets, and I don't teach trends. I like to teach, and I don't teach perfection either. So if you go to my Instagram or if you go on my website, you will not see the picture perfect dishes. I teach real food and real life, like everyday cooking to people. And it's foundation, it's the basics. So if you look, for example, what a culinary school teaches, they start with the basics. They start with the foundations, with the knife skills. I take the similar approach by teaching the foundations, the basics, the food literacy of what is cooking from a wellness perspective. And so using real ingredients. So and that's it's using like using ingredients that you know, using ingredients that are shared among cultures. And that is always my approach. So whether you're a home cook, depending on what your need is, if your need is to really understand how to create a recipe, how to understand how food makes you feel, and whether you're, for example, a hospitality professional as well, we look back at all the mother sauces. How can we recreate all of those using real ingredients, using what's available, using based off of the nature of your establishment? So all of these things come into play. So it's not a one formula fits everybody. And I think this is where Unfortunately, this is where all the confusion is coming from. People were not, they're not taking the time to take a step back and look at healthy eating. What is it really like? How does that look on an everyday basis rather than, oh, this diet here looks really good. Oh, I'm going to go high protein for a month. That's probably not going to change your life if you still don't understand the foundations and the basics.
I don't like diets, these crazy diets that people go on. I'm going to eat just, no carbs or just protein or just this. You have to be aware of what works for your body because everybody is different, right? Everybody is different. So what works for one person might not work for me. And when we go into the processed foods, it's one formula for everybody, and it's not real food. It's processed and processed and processed, and that's why our bodies don't accept that. So what you're saying about educating people on eating real food is so important, and sometimes people don't understand how important it is and how easy it is. You turn it into an easy thing. When I took so many of your cooking classes and I love them, I learned how to make plant-based cheese and all the nut milks. I love that, and I love your approach to health as well, because there are even natural foods that for some people will cause like too much mucus in the body, or will some foods are not going to be well adapted by some kind of you know like organism, like bodies, right? So I love how your approach is so individual and it's so holistic. You look at the person as a whole and the whole like menu as a whole also. It's not just, what's trending. It's what works for that person or for that community or that culture. I love that approach.
Thank you. Well, the thing is, I my goal is to really help try to get people to stop outsourcing their eating decisions based off of a diet trend or a recipe or a different rule. For example, for home cooks, for people like you or like anybody else, once you learn the skills and not the rules, then you're able to then maybe you can look at a diet trend and say, you know what, I'm actually training heavily this month and I need to be a little bit more high protein. Then you don't need to completely change how you're eating. You don't need to completely reinvent the wheel. You have the skills because that goes before anything else. And with obviously in the past 5 years, I've been working a lot with chefs. I've been training food service professionals, and I've had a number of requests for consultancies for restaurants or hotels or spas. And it's what I tell usually my clients. I will teach recipes. Sure. We'll have a list of menu items. But what I want to teach the chefs is how to actually have the skills and be able to manage within the kitchen operations, how to build a consistency within their menu and how to create menu items with the skills that they're learning from me. So then in a month, when the owner of the restaurant is going to ask, well, I need you to add another recipe, so then the owners, my clients, don't have to call me again and say, "Oh, Manuela, I need another 5 recipes." Their chefs can actually do it. So for me, that is empowerment. So my goal, and I always joke with my clients, my goal is, for example, with food service and hospitality, hire me once, and I want to get your chefs the skills so they're not just learning a diet, they're learning how to build a well-balanced plate, how food, how they can cook simply, how they can cook seasonally and consistently. And then when the need comes, let's say you have a VIP client who comes in and they are, I don't know, gluten-free, vegan, and maybe they cannot even have nuts. That would be a challenge, right? Not for the chef, because then he's trained how to actually really look at flavor, at texture, and how to actually create a menu. And the same goes for the home cooks.
Right? You're not teaching them just a recipe. You're
No.
giving them the knowledge to be creative and the confidence to be creative, because once they know the skills that you've taught them, they can create different kinds of foods and recipes from that base, like solid knowledge that you taught them. I love that. That's really something I've never seen anybody do that trains chefs, right? They usually just train the chef and give the recipes, and you have to call me back if you want anything else. And I do really want to talk about your zero waste kitchen because you are a pioneer in that. And I know that sustainability is a pillar of your work. So
Hmm.
could you take us behind the scenes of your consulting process when you're designing a class, a training? How do you ensure that the ingredients respect the local ecosystem while staying true to your high ethical standards? And how do you implement the zero waste kitchen? How do you teach that skill? I mean, we don't have to go into many details, but how do you go about that? Because we know that the food industry has so much waste. It's absurd the amount of waste restaurants and just the food industry has.
Yes, so the way, well, there's many aspects because there's the sourcing, and obviously it really comes from the actual sourcing of the food. So usually if I'm working with the hospitality industry, if I'm working with food service, I actually start the work with procurement and the people in charge of purchasing, because they are the ones that, it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and call your wholesale distributor who will be able to source for you in the middle of winter a mango from Ecuador, and or as some other country. And so I usually start with the sourcing and procurement because that's really important, and I would have the same approach if it's somebody, if it's even a family who wants to eat more sustainably. So usually, in the case of a family working with me, we really look at what's in season. I try to sometimes, if there's the organization like Slow Food, I try to use those wonderful resources and work with the local producers to see what really is available. And so with home cooks, it's a little bit easier because you're not set on a certain menu, so you can have a little bit more inspiration from what is locally available. Right now, obviously with establishments, then that comes with a challenge, because if you're in the middle of winter and nothing is really technically growing, then we have to look at what's regional. So then you might not be able to work with what's local. You might be able to work with what's actually regional or at least national level, right? So the sourcing is really important because obviously you're not only using something that is a lot more nutrient dense because it's been fresh picked, but you're also building onto the circular economy, because by creating the demand from the local farmers, they gain the confidence and the actual encouragement that yes, you need to keep growing this. So then it just start kind of feeding off of each other, and by them having the confidence that they should be growing their produce, then they will have more available, and then it just becomes a natural cycle that is beautiful. And but then obviously the waste that we produce, so that's what Scai, my new business, is has grown from this, which is really teaching chefs how to think creatively. And instead of utilizing, instead of buying the plants from let's say you're working with produce, so what can you do? Don't buy the bag of the roots, for example, that have none of the greens, which are beautiful. Buy the greens. So we're trying to go from root to bloom, which obviously I'm not the inventor of this term, but it's a term I absolutely love. And there's a lot of people that have been doing this way before me, but I love the word root to bloom. So you use everything from what's below the earth all the way to the tippy top of the sprouts and the blossoms of the fruit. So I try to inspire the chefs, inspire the home cooks that you can use everything. Again, nose to fin, when you're not talking about just produce, when you're talking about the animal, like animal protein. So what can we use from um, from, let's say you buy a fish, What can you use from the fish to try to recreate your menu with something that actually will try to discard as much as possible. So inspiring the chefs with my classes that are usually trying to utilize every single item. There's a lot of preserving that I do, a lot of fermentation, so a lot of dehydration. And by doing that, we're actually looking at how the cultures used to preserve food before we had fridges. But it also, in the case of food service, it's a little more challenging because it has to fit into a fast paced operation as well. So, in a home kitchen, it's always more fun. You can preserve this, you can preserve that. In a fast paced kitchen, what I try to do is also work with a crossover between the bar and if there's a bar, right? And the kitchen, because there's a lot of peels that can go to the bar and vice versa. So it's really fun. And I do have to usually create an approach that is completely personalized depending on the venue in that case.
That is so cool. It's so creative. I would never have thought about the peel of the orange or the lime going to the bar, because sometimes that's what they do. There's so much waste because sometimes we don't plan, and the impact, the circular economy, everything is just beautiful. I love that. You're so creative, Manuela. I
Oh,
love it.
thank you. Yeah, my goal, it's very hard because imagine coming to a chef and saying, well, and for example, when I was in the Caribbean, most of my consultancies, I would look at a menu and I would see the three usual suspects that you see being placed as seafood, right? You see tuna, salmon, and shrimp. For example, in the Caribbean, we don't really have that. So it's always a challenge to try to convince the chefs. So I always try to find, a dish that chefs will feel comfortable putting in a menu, and then we just try to substitute and add a local fish, add a local animal protein. And the same goes as well with what they do with the waste, right? So not only we're trying to reduce the waste. So I always tell everybody, it doesn't matter if it's a home cook or a chef, first you need to reduce and reuse, and only then you can think about the recycling and the composting, because recycling and composting, it requires a somewhat some sort of carbon footprint as well. So the goal is, before you think what to do with the waste, try to see how you can reduce it. And I probably shouldn't even talk about plastic, right? Because that's a whole other concept. No, let's not even go there.
It's a whole different beast.
Yes.
Plastic is insane. Oh my gosh. Let's not even go there
No, let's
today.
not. That's another call.
Building a global consultancy across different continents comes with its own set of hurdles, I'm sure. Can you share a moment where a project or a vision didn't go as planned? How did you navigate that challenge, and what did it teach you about the business of wellness, and of, of how you overcome these challenges? Because being a business owner is not easy, and especially when it comes to different foods, cultures, countries. Tell us about a challenge that you faced and how you pushed through it.
Well, I don't know if I can say this is like the best formula to solve the problem, but I think that in general, working internationally, I think there's always as a global consultant, the number one challenge I would say is always the cultural, the communication with different cultures. And so when, you have a certain set of ideas of how you approach certain menus, but you have to also look at not just the culture of how different nationalities, like when I have to sometimes work, I have a client in the Middle East, for example, and it's you have to take in what's available in across the world. So finding out what's available across the world takes a lot of creativity, so it's a lot of research that I have to do. it takes also in consideration how different chefs work. So you're working with maybe a chef from India, and you might be working with a chef from the Middle East and a chef from China. So when you put all these people together in the same room and you're trying to maybe introduce one of these wellness concepts, like, I don't know, a digestive tonic that comes from I don't know, a Chinese medicine tradition. It's always like, how do you introduce that, to chefs that will probably not, they don't speak the same language, right? So the way I try to overcome that is really trying to find that point in common. And once again, we always have like food is what brings us together as well. So I do a little bit of research and I find out what is that connection that I can try to find with the chefs from different cultures, and what is something that would bring a similarity to them so they can go like, oh yes, that's true. A good example was when I had a consultancy in Singapore, and I had to work with a number of Chinese chefs. And they already told me like they loved to add, because MSG is a part of a lot of Asian cooking. And, that's a controversial topic. A lot of people say that MSG is bad, and some people say MSG, it's a natural element. And some people say, well, it shows up naturally in nature. And but my client had specifically requested, you need to remove MSG from everything that those chefs are going to do. And they love to use MSG. So in my case, I knew that that was going to be a very big challenge. I was in my mid 30s. They were all extremely seasoned chefs. And so how do I show up remotely and tell the chefs you can no longer use MSG? So I found different ways to add. What is MSG? MSG enhances flavor. So, how in the natural world, in the world of wellness cooking, how do you enhance flavor? It's by bringing out umami in food. So I showed up to them already using already with a solution for them. Like, look, you cannot use MSG in this, but how about we start adding nutritional yeast to some of the dishes, and in dishes that you would never think, because in the wellness world we use nutritional yeast to bring out what, a cheesy flavor. But we were adding nutritional yeast to chocolate pies. We were adding nutritional yeast to tomato sauces. We were adding nutritional yeast to a lot of Asian dressings that normally you wouldn't add, because it brings out the flavor. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It
it's always trying to find something in common with with who you're speaking with your audience, with your language, right? And that's one of my, I guess that's one of my tools, like, as since I work remotely with people from all walks of life.
that is incredible, and I just learned something new because I always thought nutritional yeast was just for cheesy flavors. Now I'm going to use
No.
it for everything.
Well, a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And now that nowadays there's so many different, now it became kind of a trend, right? To have like different plant-based umami dishes that you can use. And so now my list of tricks has actually expanded but besides the MSG. But it's really trying to find something that will create a rapport, with, and that goes, it doesn't need to be just in food service. That is also a great tool that I use with kids when I design classes for kids. Like, how do you tell a teenager to eat healthy? Teenagers that probably won't even listen to their parents. So who am I to come to a teenager and tell them, oh, you know what? This is how you actually cook a healthy meal. If I come to a teenager and use those exact words, they're probably not going to listen to me. So once again, with kids, it's creating rapport, and then with kids it's a completely different approach that I would use.
That's so true. So let's talk about the giving back chain, where brands and consumers unite to support the planet and the community. You
Mhm.
speak been about food being rooted in purpose. How does your brand Sky contribute to the community or the planet? Are there any specific projects or organizations that you support with? Well, you already said that you love to work with local farmers, and that's a great way of giving back. Are there any other educational programs and other, projects that you're particularly proud of?
Well, right now I'm not currently involved. I just relocated. I had a very big international relocation that I just did. So I'm getting my foot wet again. I'm back in the States after living overseas for, I would say, 14 years. But I'm actually launching a platform that it will actually have a free access for members if they want to join in. And I will be doing that for people that are really looking into this food literacy that I am planning on teaching. And for that I will be searching different organizations where I can actually help them. So for example, one of the ones that I really want to offer my services will be for people that are dealing with some chronic diseases, not chronic, but people that are undergoing, for example, chemotherapy, and people that are undergoing cancer treatment. Obviously, as a chef, I would not be, I wouldn't be actually telling them what to eat. I wouldn't be diagnosing with certain ingredients. But my goal is to be able to offer for anybody who's undergoing treatment that they can join in my my members website, so they can actually learn, so they can try to feel a little bit better. It's a very close cause to my heart. I unfortunately lost the most important person in my life to cancer a couple years ago. So my goal is to really try to help people that are undergoing this, and maybe they can actually add, there's so many issues that come with it. There's nausea, there's mouth sores, there's digestive distress. And so if they can find maybe one or two recipes that actually they would want to eat, that would mean the world to me.
I love that because there are a lot of doctors that would really benefit from your consultancy to help them because they know what their patients can or cannot eat, but they don't
Mhm.
have the recipes. They don't have ideas to share with them and education on nutrients in food. So that's a beautiful work. And I think that your work is already a giving back chain itself, what you do. So that is beautiful. I love that. And I'm sorry about your loss. I know it was really hard um, for you. And cancer sucks. It really does. But I think that the the best you can do is give people the opportunity to eat well and eat things that are not, going to give them even more nausea and more of the, like how they feel so bad when they have cancer. But if they can eat a little bit better or even learn, about certain foods that they can eat and what that's going to do for their body, it's a good thing to have during that process. I love that.
No, absolutely. And I've always wanted to do that as well. And it was actually working with a couple doctors exactly because of that. A lot of people, they work with functional medicine. Now there's even now a number of different businesses offering functional medicine testing. And so everybody who's, it doesn't matter if you're working with a functional medicine doctor or if you're actually just using one of those new platforms that you can sign up and pay, I don't know, 300, $400, and you can get all that precision testing. At the end of that, you come out, you end up being handed a list of all the yes foods and all the no foods. But most people will look at those lists and say, well, like, what do I do with this? I just found out that I need to eat, I need to consume a lot of omega fatty acids, and, but I can't have salmon, but I don't like sardines. Like, what do I do? And the doctors, the same way that I'm not a doctor, health coaches and doctors, they're not chefs. Trust me, I've
Yes.
seen some of those recipes, and and also they're not practical. I've seen some of these, and no offense, I mean, but I like to stick to my culinary side and then work with these doctors, because when you get handed over a diet and one day for breakfast you need to do a carrot cake waffle and the next day you have to make a frittata, most people, they don't have time for that. Every day you're building up a complete recipe from scratch for breakfast. That's not practical. So
Right.
I try to look at those foods and really create, like, how much time do you have in your day? And then based off of that, what can you eat? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? And then we can build something that's realistic. And I've seen some wonderful recipes or ideas coming from functional medicine websites. But most of the time, people will come to me and they will say, "My doctor is amazing. However, there's no way I can follow this set of this meal template that they gave me. It's very confusing."
It has to be easy. People don't have the
It
time.
has
And when you're undergoing cancer treatment, you don't have the energy sometimes. So you have to have something prepared, pre-made, that, that you prepped before, so that you can actually eat well and have something that's easy and available for you.
Exactly.
And
And that's what I love to see is the crossover between, the collaboration between health coaches and chefs, between functional medicine doctors and chefs, being able to, because I don't have the skill set. If you come to me and say, well, I haven't been sleeping well, it's not my job, it's not my role. I don't have the qualifications to go and diagnose anybody or even tell you what you should be eating. So my favorite partnership and collaboration is when a coach, a doctor, or somebody comes to me and says, "There you go. Here's a list of ingredients this person can eat. They have 30 minutes in the day to make their food. Now go and make some magic happen and help them out." And that's, once you hand me the list of ingredients and once you tell me what you like, what you don't like, then I can help these people. And I think this overlapping between the chefs and the doctors, it's finally happening. And it's culinary medicine. It's beautiful.
it really is. It's amazing. And your work embodies the pillars of our CMB certification, which is
Mm.
transparency, sustainability, social impact. And in an industry that is sometimes greenwashed, well washed, how do you think a certification like CMB helps a culinary founder build genuine trust with a global audience? How do you think that could be useful for your particular field?
I think it's really about, once again, it's not necessarily, it's not something that would come from, it's rooted in nature. It's rooted not only in sourcing from nature but giving back to nature. So by not following specific diet trends, a chef can actually work with the same principles that, your body will perfectly understand a food that comes in a natural state, and actually you're utilizing the whole food. So in that sense, that similarity would really enrich a chef to be, it would actually allow a chef to be certified because the basis is the same. We are above a label. We are above a trend, because the trends will come and go and the labels will come and go, and there's a rule that comes and goes. But is it giving back to the planet? Is it giving back? Is your body benefiting from this? Is your health benefiting from this? And so we're all teaching and learning skills and not rules, and it's embedded in something that's not a brand, it's not a product, it's a mission.
It is a mission. It really is.
I
And
hope that
it
answers your question.
does, because that's what our certification is all about, is recognizing the mission driven brands, the mission driven founders, people that are here, not just building a business, but they're driven by their purpose of how they're helping their communities and the planet. So I think that the work is very aligned, and seeing chefs today have a mission that goes above trends, and beyond trends, and beyond just what the food industry is creating. It's not just a for profit business now. It's also a mission driven business, and that's the beauty of it, right? And that's what you're doing, helping so many people, helping farmers, local farmers, and people get healthier. So that's very aligned with our mission as well. I love it.
Exactly. You know, I love, I definitely, I love what you have created with your certification as well, and all the different brands that I've seen you launch and the businesses and everything. And I think that, you know, it's definitely, it's laying out a foundation of a work that's not performative, you know, because all I keep seeing over and over, whether it's the well washing or the greenwashing, it's like it's just making people so confused. It's making everybody so anxious. And it's also, it's not helping out, but the anxiety that people feel about eating, you know. So not only it's mission driven, but it's also, it's empowering, you know, because if you're actually able to understand and have trust and what you know, like it's people we used to know how to feed ourselves. Like, when did we become so confused with how to eat and where to buy your food and who do we trust, you know? So I think that being able to deliver something that stands in ageless and timeless in an age where you're just being bombarded with so much, is that's where the true power stands. And I think people more and more, they want that, they want real, they want authentic, they want to know, and they don't want just another broken promise.
No.
And
Yes,
yeah.
and what you're saying is really true, because I love that expression that you said, the from root to bloom,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
People are going back to their roots, and they're going back to, the simplicity of life, because life got complicated, and it's apps, and it's, all these tools, and track your pulse, and track this and track that, and then people became overwhelmed with all the wellness tools, with all the wellness, gadgets and things that they had. And it causes anxiety, because you have to track, how many steps did I take? How many calories did I burn? How many calories that am I eating? And you just create this anxiety around wellness. And that's not what wellness is all about. It's slowing down and not speeding up and not adding more. It's sometimes really removing things from your life and not just adding, right? And I think that's where our work, you as, a chef, and like focused on wellness, and us also focused on wellness, is in bringing back the simplicity, right? The education without the overwhelm, without the millions of tools, millions of things that you expect from yourself, because that's not how you're going to become more mindful or aware of your body, of your nutrition. It's really slowing down, right? And
Yes.
enjoy life.
No, 100%. And it's also, you know, just one missing component that I think there's a lot that the more we know about food, the more we understand about the protein and how the body absorbs, and the macros and the micros and everything. It's like, how does the food really make you feel?
Yeah.
You know, like what, for example, you know, a good example of this is my body. You know, I'm a huge proponent, I've always lived off of green juice, I'm constantly drinking my green juices. And I've noticed, in the winter, now that I'm living it's my first time having a proper winter, as you know. I've noticed that my body naturally has been not, I haven't been craving green juices. And why is that? Because it's too cooling for my body. And so
Yes.
I've noticed that my body has been naturally drawn to broths and hot liquids and warming spices. So even when I do my juices, I've noticed that even the nature of my juices has been changing. I've been juicing a lot more roots. It feels a lot more grounding for me in the winter when I'm not stepping outside barefoot. There's also that. And so, without sounding too crunchy or too hippie, it's really how the food affects you. And so that also, you know, there's a component that's always embedded in all my lessons and all my trainings, all my consultancies, not necessarily that I bring it up because sometimes it's not in the right context for me to bring it up. So I wouldn't necessarily tell a client I'm not going to do a green juice for you because it's winter, it's too cooling. They might not understand, but their body will understand.
Yes.
So that's really kind of the hidden DNA behind my work as well. And that's really observing. So even if I don't tell people, they will naturally feel that and they will resonate with that.
And listening to your body is
Mhm.
essential because,
Yeah.
okay, green juice always worked for you, but now you're in a different climate, you're in a different
Hmm.
country. So you have to listen to your body. If your body is telling you, I don't want green juice, I want something more warming for my body, because right now we're in the winter, it's snowing outside. You were in Barbados, you were living in an island, it was warm, you were at the beach. So it's different. And that's why there's no set rule. You just need to listen to the reactions of your own body, right?
Exactly. And not always, and I don't need to, as a consultant, as an educator, I don't need to necessarily even tell people if they're not ready to hear that. But it's guaranteed if I teach somebody a green juice and a broth and they come back home and it's been minus 20 outside, they will for sure come home and make a beautiful, like whether it's plant-based broth or a bone broth, they will for sure reach out for the broth before they reach out for the green juice. And so, and they don't need, eventually and by doing that they will give themselves permission as well to not be so inflexible. And it's about bringing, every day our body changes. So I'm telling you this today about the broth or the green juice. And maybe tomorrow I might wake up with a sore throat. And then I might crave a ginger heavy juice,
Yes.
So, but before all of that, before you have a formula or a recipe, you need to understand how to feed yourself. And a chef in a restaurant needs to understand how to build a healthy menu, how to navigate around the food allergies. And people were more and more wanting personalized diets. It's the nature of where we're going with all this tracking and everything else. So we can go on forever. I know we have limited.
I know we can, and it's basically not a one size fits all for food.
No,
You have
exactly.
to listen to your body. Thank you so much, Manuela, for sharing your inspiring journey and for all the work that you do to create a more sustainable and conscious world. You've shown us how businesses can truly be a force for good. And to everyone watching, remember that every choice we make can shape the future. So let's choose wisely, live intentionally, and support those who are making a difference. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and let's keep building a brighter future together. Thank you so much, Manu.
Thank you so much, Vanda. It was a pleasure to be here and have a chat. We're pretty much talking about the same things we talk about on voice notes, right?
True.